Sway and
Ben Tooley, fiscal analyst for the House Republicans.
Bob Cherry, State Representative from Greenfield and Pendleton.
Alicia Nafziger, fiscal analyst for the House Republicans.
Jim Landers, I'm with Legislative Services Agency.
Deanna Owari, Deputy Budget Director, State Budget Agency.
Zach Jackson, Deputy Budget Director.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat, fiscal analyst.
State Representative Terry Gooden, District 66, Democrat, member of the State Budget Committee, House of Representatives.
Susan Preble, fiscal analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
David Reynolds, fiscal analyst, Senate Republican Caucus.
Ryan Mishler, Senate District 9, North Central Indiana.
Jason Dudich, State Budget Director for Governor Holcomb.
I'd like to officially call the meeting to order. We have the minutes of the last meeting placed before us. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as distributed? Can I have a motion for the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as distributed. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. We are going to jump to under review item number 6 to election of a State Budget Committee chairman. The tradition is the Senate is now in their 2-year rotation as chairmanship. So I'll entertain a motion for State Budget Committee chairman.
Chairman Brown, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Senator Ryan Mishler as the chair of the State Budget Committee, please.
I'll second that motion. Are there any further nominations for Budget Committee Chairman? Hearing none, thank you. Nominations are closed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Senator Mishler is now chairman of the State Budget Committee, and so I turn the gavel over to Chairman Mishler. Thank you very much, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Brown. 1 month earlier than I expected, but hope Senator Kinley's doing okay. Right now you have a proposed agenda. It's been distributed to the members. Is there any amendments to the agenda? The agenda is placed on the table for discussion. First item is Department Administration. Mr. Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Department Administration is requesting funding to continue the exterior renovation of the Indiana State House. Most of you know Phase 1 is currently ongoing. We hope to have that wrapped up here by this winter. The next phase will focus on the south quadrant of the building and will essentially mirror the work you're seeing done on the north end. Included in this work will be resealing and repairing the exterior limestone, replacing the caulk and mortar in the limestone joints, and then removing some of that black staining that you see on the exterior of the building as well. Also, we will completely rebuild the southern stairway, similar to what you're seeing done on the north side. Once that's done, that stairway should be structurally sound and should keep water out of the ground level. Finally, on that part, we will also remove the large wooden doors, refinish those, and then replace them when we're done. If this approved, we anticipate starting this work in the spring of 2018 and finish up before session starts in 2019. Any questions?
Any questions for Matt?
Thank you,
Matt. Thank you. Next, Indiana State Police, Major Holland.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee, for allowing us this time. I'm Major Steve Holland. I serve as the commander for the Laboratory Division for the State Police. I'm here on behalf of the State Police to request initial funding from the Laboratory Improvement Appropriations associated to our capital improvement projects. This request is for an initial needs assessment, as well as leading into what we hope to be conceptual designs based upon the results of the needs assessment report. Our partners at the Public Works and Department Administration, Mr. Brian Renner and Matthew Kent, have facilitated contracts ready to implement in order to get this underway. The needs assessment will be a I guess you could say, a holistic approach or a comprehensive needs assessment, not only associated with our laboratory operations, needs assessment associated to our customers, what their expectations are, as well as associated to the current sites for applicability of actually doing construction on those sites if that's where the decisions are made to have those sites refurbished or rebuilt. We're very fortunate, the design component architectural firm that the DOA has chosen for this was previously our architectural firm that designed our Indianapolis facility. So they're already well aware of our intimate operations and how we operate as a laboratory, which should speed up the process. So with that, we're respectfully requesting the requested amount of about $450,000 to initiate our capital improvement projects.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Major Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to look at other states and maybe what are best practices in
Yes, sir.
laboratory? Is that part of this analysis?
Yes,
also?
it will be, and it already has happened. I've traveled to other states looking at newest laboratory designs, and of coincidence, some of those laboratories were completed recently by this architectural firm that we are going to employ. And on that, I'd like to pass forward that the design component of our Indianapolis facility, it's now 10 years old, but it's still state-of-the-art. The newest labs built in the country are still implementing the same design component as our newest 10-year-old lab. So we're very happy about that.
You made comments about surveying your customers. Who are your customers? Are they the local police departments or the sheriffs?
Yes, we serve the entire state of Indiana, 91 counties, and part of 92. The 92nd county would be Marion. Marion County, Indianapolis has their own crime lab. Between the Marion County Crime Lab and the Indiana State Police System, those are the only two accredited full-service crime lab systems operating in the state. So we serve all law enforcement, the criminal justice community in the state of Indiana.
Are you also going to be partnering with the Department of Administration to make sure that, more than, I guess,
Yes, sir.
police people have input in what the construction and design will be?
Absolutely. That's the entire point of this needs assessment, is an independent look at not only our operations, but comments and input from those we serve in order to make this is a big decision, a multi-generational decision will come from the design and the build out from this project. So we absolutely want to make sure it's done correctly. We have partnered with the DOA now on this for about 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Here. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Major Holland? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Department of Natural Resources. I don't see Cam. Mike? Yes. Okay.
Yes, I'm Mike Smith, the Chief Financial Officer of DNR. Director Clark had a conflict this morning. The Division of State Parks is requesting approximately $3.4 million to address various needs at two of our most popular parks, Spring Mill and Brown County. These two properties generated over $3.5 million in combined revenue in fiscal 17 and had a revenue versus expense ratio of 120%, with an estimated attendance of over 2 million customers. Projects include the rehab of the Civilian Conservation Corps stone structures on Trail 2 at Brown County. Those structures include a bridge, a stairway, and a shelter retaining wall. Projects at Spring Mill include roof repairs and HVAC rehab at the Spring Mill Inn, pool repairs and cave entrance and stairs rehab at Donaldson Cave.
Any questions for Mike? Just a comment, I chaired Natural Resources, and when I chaired Natural Resources, I realized that our parks actually, our inns actually make money. So it's one department that made money, so I commend you for that. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not completely responsible for that, but I will spread the word. Project number 2, the Division of State Parks is requesting $780,000 to partially demolish and rebuild the combined bathhouse and comfort station located near the beach of Mississinewa Lake in Miami County. This facility was virtually destroyed by the 2015 flood. Work will include mold remediation, plumbing and electrical repairs, an HVAC system, and sewer upgrades. This property generated $1.1 million in revenue in fiscal 2017.
Any questions? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Next is Division of Mental Health and Addictions, Jeff Babb.
Thank you. Division of Mental Health and Addictions is requesting funding to perform a facility study at Evansville Children, Logansport, and Richmond State Hospitals. This study will help the physical plant directors prioritize capital needs for the next foreseeable future, 10 years at least. The last study was performed in 2000. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Carl Brown.
Thank you. Good morning. School for the Blind is respectfully requesting funding for approximately $3.7 million for the third phase of tuck pointing for buildings E, F, G, our bell tower, and the Apple Tunnel. Over the years, we've had a lot of water infiltration that's caused a lot of damage to the interior. We've had obviously 2 phases before this that has really done a good job in correcting that problem. So this will be the phase to get the middle school, high school, auditorium, the library, the administration, and also the bell tower and the Apple Tunnel. And what we'll do on that is all the mortar, the bad mortar will be taken out, replaced. The decorative terracotta has to be taken off and replaced, and in some cases may actually have to be special made because some of that's been on there for over 60 years, and you can't just go and purchase it anywhere anymore. So they'll actually have to make it.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Department of Corrections, Kevin.
Good morning. The Department of Correction is requesting $704,000 to renovate the 1950s era steel water tower at the Pendleton Correctional Facility. The project is, scope is to remove the exterior lead paint, reline the exterior, or the interior, recoat the exterior, perform all the environmental remediation that's required, and bring the tower up to standards. This water tower provides potable water to 3 correctional facilities co-located on the same campus. It's the longest a water tower has ever had a coating on it that I'm aware of. It has done its job. It's lasted a long time. It's just time for its phased remediation.
Mr. Dudich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, any offender labor used on this project, or would that?
No, sir. Very specialized labor, especially because of the lead removal. There's only 2 or 3 companies in the Midwest that are capable of doing the lead removal. The only thing the offender labor will be doing is some groundwork, some preparatory work, relocating. We'll use them with some of our staff to relocate some power lines in preparation for the project. But once that, we'll actually fence off with offender labor the work site and turn it over to a contractor for the project.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Next is Department of Transportation, Steve McAvoy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. NDOT has 2 items on the agenda this morning. The first one is we request funding in the amount of $490,000 for the architectural and engineering fees for the construction of the new Crawfordsville Subdistrict and Salt Building. The existing Crawfordsville Subdistrict building was built in 1966 and the existing Salt Building in 1979. Both buildings have exceeded their life expectancy, and further repair costs would not be effective at extending their life cycle. The existing subdistrict building does not allow for OSHA-approved work clearances or proper ventilation within the garage space. In addition, the age and condition of the structures have contributed to other operational environmental issues, such as ADA accessibility, insufficient electrical service, truck washing, site drainage, stormwater runoff. Construction of the new sub and salt building will mitigate all these concerns. The construction of the subdistrict and salt building is scheduled for fiscal year 19. The estimated cost for the sub-district is $6.5 million, and the estimated cost for the salt building is $1.45 million. The design fee is 6% of the total construction cost for both buildings, with consideration given for combining these projects. Both buildings will be built on the existing sub-district site. After completion of the construction projects, this existing sub-district and salt building will be demolished. Any questions?
Any questions? Representative Brown?
More comment, I know for a while, we're doing salt buildings, it seemed like every budget committee.
Yeah.
And I anticipate that part of it is, I know there are over 150, closer to 200 salt buildings throughout the state. Do you anticipate that we'll see periodically, again, some salt buildings?
Absolutely. I think we've probably got about 115 statewide. Many of them are the old salt dome size, which were built 30, 40 years ago. So our goal is to replace those with our new, barn-type structures that we can load and offload under roof. So yeah, I would say, we've probably got 40 to 50 to replace. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, the next project we have, NDOT is formally requesting funding in the amount of $2,760,000 for Phase 1 of 3 phases for the replacement of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems at our current Central Materials and Testing Facility that's located in Indianapolis. This building was built in 1967, has many defects that we must address for safety and operational issues. The risk of not updating the Materials and Test building may have employee safety consequences as well as OSHA fines. The building currently poses a risk to employee safety, health, and the environment. Many of the building's original mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are intact, and while operational, are clearly at the end of their useful life. The building's potable water is undrinkable due to contaminants from the distribution piping. The electrical system is undersized for future use, and the building does not have a fire sprinkler system. In addition, the building's air handling units are no longer able to provide enough makeup air to our lab space, which causes them to become negative. Positive air pressure is required in our labs to keep our instruments within calibration. Phase 1 of 3 will include replacement of the boilers, the makeup air units, 1/3 of the building control system, 1 of 3 restrooms, the main water supply to the building, 1/3 of the natural gas and sanitary piping, 1/3 of the electrical system, and installation of an emergency generator and the building fire protection. This phase of the project will take 14 months to complete. Phase 2 is scheduled to take place in fiscal year 20 and is estimated at $3,765,000. Phase 3 is scheduled to take place in fiscal year 21, also $3,765,000. The total estimated project cost for all 3 phases is $10,290,000.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Next, we have the university projects, and first is Ivy Tech. President Elsperman.
Thank you, Chairman Mishler. And I thought I'd give you a quick update on the governor's next level jobs, just so you know that we're very working diligently on that. We've had over 4,000 leads, and these are those certificate level, high wage, high demand jobs across the state. Governor rolled out last month. 4,000 leads, 500 are in the process of enrolling, of applying, and we have 50 enrolled to date. So just want to let you know we're going to continue to meet workforce needs. We have 3 projects for approval today. The first one is actually an EDA grant. There are no new state dollars in that. It is more than $1 million is federal dollars, EDA, another $1 million gifts, and very few from any general funds of ours. So it is for a precision agriculture program, which has been approved by CHE last year. We've enrolled students in that program. It's been endorsed by Farm Bureau, and it's meeting a very important need of all that high-tech representative, as you know, Representative Cherry, in the ag industry, those technicians that we need to do the agriculture in contemporary ways. So that is the first project. It just exceeds the $2 million limit, but we would seek your approval to move forward with that. Are there any questions about the EDA project?
Any questions? Representative Brown?
Thank you, President Ellspermann, for being here, and thank you for what you do to get the workforce up and prepared. This project, is there any duplicity that the industry does? I mean, doesn't John Deere go out and train technicians to set up machinery that they're selling? So are we creating a little bit of duplicity?
There is huge demand. When we shared the program a year ago with Farm Bureau, they were very excited about it. When we went back and updated them a few months ago, Randy Crone said, this is some of the most important work we can be doing, because across the state it is not work that's done. These are technician level. So yes, there are some that Deere and others, but Bain Welker with Case is one of our biggest supporters of this project, to have more technicians to be in the fields when you need them in the spring and the fall. This is not equipment that can sit and wait 6 months for assistance. So there's a real shortage across the state, and these technologies are growing. We have 12 enrolled in the program today that will continue to grow. We know that our sister institution, Vincennes, also has a program, but there's huge demand across the state, and this is important. And it has been approved. All that workforce demand was done by CHE a year ago.
Any other questions? Okay, next.
All right, the second project is our, the two projects that were approved through the legislature this year. The first one, Kokomo's renovation. As many of you recall, a little over a year ago, we had the tornado came through, so all of our health professions had to be moved onto Kokomo's main campus, which was already Ivy Tech's highest priority project. We were very thankful for the funding provided this year by the General Assembly, $40 million, 43 total, but $40 million coming through the state. This allows us to upgrade that campus to standards of today, to provide the health professions training that needs to be done with nursing in high demand, all of the health professions out there in high demand. We see this one as our highest priority. We're moving as quickly as we can through the design to get this rolling, as our accreditation will even be difficult with nursing this spring as we're trying to attend to difficult situations. So this will provide a very tight campus for Kokomo, meeting the needs of students, and it will be a smaller footprint when we're done overall, as we will divest of some of the extra facilities that'll come out that were around the periphery. That campus does not have a walkable campus today where our students can go between buildings and be in a safe environment. So this will tremendously upgrade the opportunities to educate students in Kokomo.
Any questions? Mr. Dudich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam President, quick question. The last comment on the write-up notes that bonds may not be issued until after June 30th, 2018. It's obviously September. Can you kind of walk through what the plan is between now and when those bonds can be issued in terms of this project and probably the next project as well?
Well, they go together. We would have hoped that we could have, because of the urgency of the Kokomo project, we had really hoped that we would be able to do that bonding in the spring. If that's not possible, we will do it just as soon as the timing works within the state budget agency's approach. But we do intend to move as quickly as we can, even trying to front some of our reserves to move this, particularly this project, forward as quickly as we can. And we do see one bond issue coming out of that, of these two projects together.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The second project is the Muncie project. Again, our second highest priority across the system to meet the needs of our students. These, again, not renovated since the 80s, and it will be to upgrade both the technology portion of our campus on the Cowan Road locations, as well as the downtown campus where many of our courses take place. It is a $43 million project. Again, we're very appreciative of the General Assembly's support for that. We will raise $43 million internally. We will again reduce our footprint at the end of this project by having just what we need, but it is important to upgrade those facilities as well. Any questions about the Muncie project?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Indiana University, Mr. Morrison.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have, Indiana University has 5 projects for you today, and I'll begin with the first one, which is on the Bloomington campus, which is the renovation of the IU golf course in Bloomington. The IU golf course is in its 7th decade, built at a time when golf was an interest, just a growing interest, and 2 gentlemen in our history went out and cleared property on the north edge of campus, cut down trees, and created themselves a golf course. The problem is they just created themselves a golf course. And in Bloomington, we never have limestone that's not too far from the surface, and over time that limestone has worked its way through, and the golf course has been in need of renovation for 20 to 30 years. One of the other problems with the course is that it's not long enough for today's players, certainly not our golf team. For those of you who don't know, that our IU golf team does not compete at the IU golf course. And while they do practice there, they do not compete there. And so this was a project long in the making to renovate the entire course, reorder holes, consume the existing par 3 course, build a new driving range, and also build a new clubhouse. It's an opportune time, given that the IU Health Bloomington Hospital is proposed to be built on what is now the existing driving range, so it's timely in doing the renovation now. The cost of the renovation is $12 million, all of it raised through philanthropy. So it is 100% philanthropy done through a campaign. That campaign went relatively quickly, which is a good sign. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have on that one.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Tom. It talks about for us that there will be certificates of participation. I presume fees off of the golf course to help, and fees associated with activities.
So the reason why we're using certificates of participation, which is not uncommon in philanthropic projects related to athletics, is that those gifts will come in over time. Okay. And given that we want to build this within about an 18-month time frame, we will use COPS to finance the project, and then the revenue from the philanthropy will pay that back over time. Should we need to, it's backed by athletic revenues, general athletic revenues.
And the length of the bond will be
25 years.
Okay.
Which is our standard with COPS.
So, as I've talked about in some of my prior comments, as we get to university projects and consistency in terminology, I mean, this might be, a certificate of participation with a sub-note that it's philanthropy, that
correct.
It's not general fund certificate of participation.
That is absolutely true. Okay. I know that the Commission for Higher Education is, and with the cooperation of the fiscal staffs and the General Assembly, working through a consistent terminology across all of the institutions.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Representative Gooden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to say thanks for moving speedily. As we know, the Feds has announced an interest rate hike, so anything that's going to be pertaining to bonding is going to cost significantly more with a higher price tag. So I urge the Budget Committee as well, if there's anything that's going to require bonding here, we may want to try to push that a little quicker to try to beat the interest rates.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Next.
Moving on to our second project, this is for R&R funding for our regional campuses of IU East in Richmond, IU Kokomo, and IU Southeast in New Albany. Over the last several biennia, we've been very grateful to the General Assembly for appropriating R&R funds specifically targeted to the regional campuses. We have not been, for the most part, not been adding new facilities on our regional campuses, but R&R has been our primary focus. Those campuses all grew up at the same time, same generations, and so they're all coming due with R&R at the same time. And these funds have been very beneficial to those campuses. They go a long way. These projects deal with things like mechanical systems, replacement of chiller systems, and particularly at IU Southeast, new roof in Kokomo. This one is $3.75 million funded by the General Assembly in cash, and it's part of a two-phased appropriation. I'll be back next year with the second phase of this project. Happy to answer any questions on this one.
Questions for Tom? Okay, next.
Moving on to the third project, this is for Fort Wayne, and I won't go into any great detail about the reorganization at the IPFW campus, but safe to say this is part of that reorganization. Indiana University will be managing the health sciences programs at the Fort Wayne campus, and as part of that reorganization, there was an examination of the existing teaching labs at IPFW and identified needs of long-needed improvements in that area. And so this was an amount of money appropriated by the General Assembly, $2.85 million, again in cash, that was appropriated for Fort Wayne to purchase new equipment for teaching labs as well as do light renovations there. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, next.
Next project is back on the Bloomington campus. This is the renovation of Ballantyne Hall in the Geology Building. For any of you that are IU alums of the Bloomington campus will certainly remember Ballantyne with fondness. And I say that, again, tongue-in-cheek. And Ballantyne, at its time, was one of the largest academic buildings in the country. It is 300,000 square feet. It is a behemoth building, built in roughly 1960. And it is in need of its full infrastructure renovation. This is not a change of purpose nor a change of look of Ballantyne. This is all infrastructure, which will be roofs, new windows. The building does not have central air conditioning right now, so if you look at an 11-story building, you'll see a ton of window air conditioners. All of that will be removed. We'll put in central air conditioning. This is fire alarms, asbestos, all the things that you would normally see in systems. Also partnered with this is the renovation of the Geology Building. Building, again, built of almost the same time, same generation, same look, just a little bit smaller, a few more laboratories, but the same kind of renovation. These projects, because they involved two very large buildings on the campus, will do them in phases because there's no way we can empty those buildings all at once. This was appropriated by the General Assembly as fee replacement, $78.5 million. To answer Director Dudich's earlier question, we are going through planning right now on A&E. We don't anticipate bidding this project until the next fiscal year, or to be ready for the next fiscal year, so the timing of it works just fine. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions? Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Tom, for your presentation. I counted almost $102 million worth of projects that are going to be going on around the Indiana University campuses. What is the goal for the university as far as women, veterans, and minorities on these projects?
We maintain the state goal, and I think, as you know, Senator Taylor, we've made great progress at IU over the last several years in terms of, almost, I'd say, quadrupling our participation numbers. And so we maintain the state's goals of 15%, but I would tell you on those projects, particularly with the new CMC delivery method, we're seeing numbers that are in the low to mid-20s. And so we've had some great success. We just completed a project in Gary that I think was around 30. So we're going to continue on that path.
All right. Thank you, Tom, for that. I think that the General Assembly did a great thing going with that CMC type of project, and I appreciate my alma mater being so strong in that area. And I know that other members of the General Assembly, especially members of the Black Caucus, have been very, very impressed by the numbers. So thank you.
Thank you. Last project for you today is on the IUPUI campus. This is the renovation of what we call PCC, the Primary Care Center. This is one of the buildings that we acquired in the Wishart Hospital transaction of a few years ago. It was the newest building that we received. It is now set for renovation, full renovation of this building. It was a clinic building. It will remain a clinic building. This is being paid for by funds from IU Health, as this is a relocation of clinics that are currently in Riley Hospital. Riley is about to undergo, the old Riley is about to undergo a renovation, so we're moving the clinics out of Riley into this building, and so that Riley can be transformed to be, to expand its offerings for women and children. And so this is $7 million paid for by funds from IU Health. Glad to answer any questions on this one.
Any questions for Tom? All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is Ball State. Bernie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bernie Hannon. I'm the Vice President and Treasurer here at Ball State. It's always our pleasure to have the Budget Committee on campus. We hope that you've enjoyed your stay. So we just have one project in 3 parts. This is a project for a residence hall and a dining facility. At Ball State, we house about 6,500 students a year, about a third of our student body. We have 2 residence hall neighborhoods, an east and a north. They comprise about 9 residence hall complexes and 11 large buildings. And the granddaddy of them all is La Follette Complex. You've heard that a couple times since you've been here. La Follette was built in 1967, housed in its prime 1,900 students, had the largest dining facility on campus, and had offices for housing and dining department. At this point, the building, at 50 years old, we've gotten a good use out of it, but it's no longer usable. It's unrepairable. We need to replace the facility. And this is the first step in that. This project is in 3 parts. It's a $90 million project. First part is a new residence hall, about 155,000 square foot building, about $50 million for the hall, a new dining facility, about 65,000 square feet, be about $35 million. Then we need to move the roadway, put some infrastructure in, and do some work on the site work, about $5 million. And the whole project, all in all, is $90 million. So you know, Ball State sets aside 3% of the replacement cost of our housing and dining every single year, so that we build up a reserve to plan for the future. We have a 25-year plan for replacement renovation of our residence halls. We use that reserve to pay for our ongoing R&R needs, put money aside for debt service, and then when we can, we pay cash for buildings to keep our debt service low. So the current plan at this point of this $90 million project would be to bond $50 million of it and pay cash $40 million. Phase 2 of this project will be the second residence hall. We'll come back to you probably about a year for that. Probably another $50 million project we had planned on bonding. We may come back to you at some later point and talk about bonding it all now while interest rates are still low, paying cash for the second part. But for now, we'd like to leave the project as is, $90 million, $50 million bonding through our housing and dining auxiliary revenues, $40 million cash out of our housing and dining reserves. Obviously, no state dollars used for housing. It's all the revenue paid by the students. So that's my short explanation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Representative Brown.
Thank you. And you said the 3% create the housing and dining reserves, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
been forever or ever since?
That's been since the 1950s.
Since
my,
the 50s.
My
okay.
predecessors get all the credit for that one.
So by spending $40 million, will that use half of it, fourth of it, 10%, all of it?
The reserve balance at the end of fiscal year 17 was $81.9 million, so a little less than half.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Taylor.
I noticed in your presentation, you don't have a restriction. When do you plan on going to market with the bonds?
Probably about a year from now.
Okay, so with doing that, you said you talked about doing both phase 1 and phase 2 in a singular bond issue?
We're going to pay some cash and some bonds for the total project. This is phase one, 90 million. Phase two will be another 50 million, so 140 million total.
Okay.
Of that 140 million total, we'll bond somewhere between 90 and 100 million. The question is, will we bond earlier or will we bond later? To do Representative Gooden's admonition, we may think very carefully about trying to get the bonds out earlier in the process if interest rates might go up. But we'll work with the budget agency staff and the IFA staff to make sure that we're all doing this in a way that we're comfortable.
Okay, yeah, because you have to spend down those funds for between a certain period of time, too. That's
We
one
do,
thing
that's
is-
correct.
Yeah, okay. The second piece, the same question I asked
Mm-hmm.
Tom. How are you guys using CMC on this?
We are using CMC in this, right? This
All
will be
right,
our
so with
second
this-
project with CMC.
Okay.
It's kind of new for us at Ball State.
Okay, so how did you guys do on the first one that you used? I mean,
So far, so good. So
Okay.
our very first CMC project was an addition to Worthing Arena, the basketball here on campus. It's about a $5 million project. It's not huge.
Okay.
It was our first sort of our toe dipping in the water on CMC, and so far, so good. And so we thought we'd go CMC with this larger project as well, but we haven't even begun bids, obviously, because we're still getting approval for the project.
Okay, last question. Do you plan on trying to meet and exceed the goals? As Tom indicated, they've been getting up to 30% for women and veterans and minority businesses. You guys plan on doing the same?
Our goal is certainly the same as the state goal. Now, whether we can boast the same numbers as IU, I can't guarantee that today.
Okay,
But it
yeah,
is
I
on our mind, and we will work toward it, of course.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next is Ben Sims, Bill Rath.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Before you, we have a project of $9.5 million for mostly an HVAC and renovation projects for our Davis Hall and our Wathen building. This will be the final two buildings on our campus that will be hooked up to our steam line, which we have been replacing now for the last 8 years. And so this is going to make a major efficiency in the use of our utilities. And the buildings were built in the 80s. And we'll be doing roofs and interior and windows, and a project long overdue.
Representative Brown.
Phil, not on this project, but I saw that you had the ribbon cutting or kind of for the mine. You had the governor down there for that ceremony. She didn't get lost or anything?
No, but she did put out a fire in the mine, and she went through the smoke. It was an awesome day, and it's an awesome facility, and hopefully we'll get you down there to see it.
Okay. And are you, the goals and I think aspirations were to use that for a lot of different agencies and
Correct.
For fire training as well as mine
Right.
safety? Do you see that coming about, or people showing?
We've already ran 4,000 miners through that mock mine, but we're getting calls every day from sheriff's departments across the state coming down to do homeland security and active shooter training and firefighting training. Great facility.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the review items. And first up is Fort Wayne. Mayor Henry.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We are asking in Fort Wayne for a small expansion of our current Creed district. The development that we're anticipating is going to be the national headquarters for an internet mortgage company. In fact, they are currently the largest one in the state of Indiana. Because of their success, they're now expanding outside of Indiana into initially the contiguous states, but then obviously throughout the country. They have chosen Fort Wayne to be the national headquarters, but the location that they want to put their particular office building is just right across the street from the boundary of our current Creed district. So we're asking to be allowed to expand our Creed district by about 2 blocks. That would accommodate them and would provide them the necessary financing to fill the gap in order to proceed. Just a short note, this is about a $30 million building, including a parking garage. About $20 to $22 million of it is the actual office building itself, the rest being parking. They will bring into downtown Fort Wayne about 250 of their own employees, anticipating to hire another 125. Their salaries are roughly $100,000 apiece, including benefits. So this is very important to us to try to keep the momentum of downtown Fort Wayne going, and we're very excited about this particular initiative, and humbly ask you to allow us to expand by about 2 blocks to our current CREE district.
Any questions for Mayor Henry? Mr. Dudich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Henry, I'd also like to note, part of the expansion is also reducing the footprint of the CREE. Can you walk through that as well?
We could reduce it, but actually, in looking at it again, I think the current exhibit that we sent you really, unless that becomes a requirement of yours, it really does not accomplish as much as we thought. Much of that land right now is parkland, which won't be developed anyway. So the probability of anything happening there is pretty low. So we could, but it's really not necessary. So we did not put that in the final exhibit, just the little 2-block expansion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next, we have the Motorsport Investment District and Indiana Finance Authority, Dan Hughey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Hughey, Indiana Finance Authority. The Indiana Finance Authority provides administrative and legal support to the Indiana Motorsports Commission. We're asking for the Motorsports Commission approved a small addition to the Qualified Motorsports Investment District related to the track. The original legislation that led to the improvements, $90+ million of improvements in the track, was approved in 2013. There was a small add-on to the Qualified Motorsports District in 2015. To kind of give a history on the Motorsports Investment District, it was created in 13. The sales and income tax dollars that are captured within this district, there was a base period determined in 2012, which was where the tax dollars were at in 2012. Any increase in income or sales tax in this district is calculated by the Department of Revenue and kind of kept as part of the offset to the state funds that were used to originally put into this project, which was $7 million appropriation for 20 years. The increase in the district basically includes, it's in the map and resolution we've given you. It's a colored area that includes, that's towards the bottom of your map. It's the mostly yellow area. You can see the yellow area is the new addition. They've asked for September 2017. The blue area was the area that was added on in 2015. The yellow area includes mainly Main Street and Speedway, which has seen significant development over the last couple of years. The Motor Speedway came to the Motorsports Commission earlier this week, seeking approval for expansion of this district. That was approved on Monday, and we are now in front of Budget Committee for review. I do have Andy Seiwert, General Counsel from IFA, and representatives from Indianapolis Motor Speedway in case you all have any questions.
Any questions? Senator Taylor.
The expansion, I'm trying to get my logistics right on the map here.
Sure.
So help me out here. When I look at the map here and I look, where's 16th Street would be right?
It's again, I may ask Doug or Mark to come up here to help through the map, but it should be, 16th Street should be towards the top of that map, Greg, in that green area. Is that right, Mark? Go ahead.
Sorry about
Taylor.
that.
That's all right.
I
That's all right.
know Dan's not a geographer.
Well, the streets aren't well marked, so I understand the question, the reason for the question. If you look at the part on the south end, the bottom end, where the yellow is, the east-west street that's just on the south end of the track, if you see the oval, is 16th Street.
Okay. So this expansion would be to include what facility right there?
Essentially, it's the balance of Main Street between 10th Street and 16th Street, which is, as Mr. Hughey said, has seen this significant growth since the the project began.
Okay, and then when I look at the other yellow piece, where's that? Just north of the yellow piece there, the proposed, part of the proposed expansion.
I'm not sure that's, I think you're asking about this little bit that's just above, so that I think is where the roundabout is now, if you remember what that looks like.
Where you,
It's sort of the southeast
Georgetown,
corner of it.
Georgetown is shut off right there, and then you got the
But
roundabout.
it's south of that a little bit. And that's where a hotel and multi-use project have been announced and are in the early stages of being developed.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, what does that include? And then those little dots to the left there, those are all what?
The dot indicates that it's property not owned by the Hallman Company.
Right.
And the ones I think you're asking about are really the west side of Main Street, adjacent to, on Main Street.
Okay, all right. So the original, then this would be the expanded. What kind of revenue generation are we talking about here?
Kind of what?
Revenue generation.
I mean, I'm talking, when I say revenue, I hate to use that word, but what kind of numbers are we talking about that you would?
I think the estimates we receive from Department of Revenue, these are only estimates, it could be in the range of $500,000 a year, $500,000 to $600,000 a year, sorry, $1,000 a year.
Okay,
Based upon the business that are in there, the sales taxes
Okay.
they charge more than anything else.
all right, thank you, Marks.
A question, the original plan was a 30-year payback to the state.
Yes.
So a change in this plan, how would that affect your ability to pay
Doesn't
back?
affect it in the lease, the payback is still 30 years. If the lease payments the track is making, which are $2 million a year for 20 years, that's $40 million. The admissions tax they are charging for race events at the track, and then the increment that's coming off of this district do not equal $140 million, which is the debt service for the improvements. And then at the end of the 30 years, the Motor Speedway will be responsible for any shortfall.
Could it possibly increase your ability to pay it faster?
Possibly, it would, we're still early on in the district, but this could help actually speed that up and get us paid off well in advance of that 30 years.
Thank you.
I think that was my question. We have the ability to pay off the bonds early. They aren't necessarily fixed as far as when they're
No,
paid.
the bonds actually have a 20-year maturity. They have a 10-year call on them. So if thing goes gangbusters, we'll have the 10-year call provision to use. The bonds actually will be paid off through state appropriations after 20 years, and we'll have that 10-year period. If there is still a gap, the increment district continues on for the next 10 years to capture that.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that we're talking about, and this is where we get kind of confused, it's more just an accounting bucket that we're putting in and looking that the verification of the increased economic activity, and we all know the Speedway is very important, very important for a lot of reasons. Worldwide name recognition, worldwide attraction of a customer and race fan type of thing. And so we're just trying to document that activity. In essence, we could write a line item, an appropriation, and pay off the bond and account for it that way, correct?
Correct, and that's exactly what's going to go on here. The increment dollars, the dollars that are going to be sales and income tax dollars in this district are going to flow right to the state's general fund. They're not going to be used as debt service on these bonds. Same as the admissions tax. There's just going to be what I would call a bookkeeping entry to continue to build up, the amount of revenue that's been captured within this district and from the admissions tax.
Thank you.
Mr. Ditch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, but just a thanks to you, Mark, and the IFA and Senator Kenley. I know this was a long discussion in terms of how this expansion would look, and I know there was a lot of back and forth, and I think if Senator Kenley was here, he would say the same thing, but thank you for your work on this and your patience in arriving at this expansion and making sure that there's revenue coming in to meet that obligation and the work that you're doing at the Speedway. So thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you.
Senator Taylor?
Chairman, I want to talk about the actual effect of this. My district is just adjacent to the track. And, I appreciate what the state has done, and I believe that the Motor Speedway it's like Doc said, is a great marketer for the state of Indiana. and this might be premature, Mark, but that area just west of there, just east of there, has seen I don't see the economic development shifting that way. I see where you guys, and I understand it, but are there any plans to try to push some development that way as well? Being selfish, it is my district, but I also see that as a benefit because it's like a corridor going into the track. And once you get to the track, you see the development, but before there, you might, see a little bit less of it. I just wondered if there's any idea what the Motor Speedway has future, I don't know.
It's a good question and one that we think about a lot. The Speedway and our company doesn't really direct, these are not our investments, right? Our development. The town of Speedway has a central role in the town of Speedway. You've seen a lot of development going to the west. Really, I think it's the market working from the Interstate 465 on Crawfordsville Road toward us. We care a lot about it continuing to the east. We think there should be, working with the city of Indianapolis, opportunities to expedite development, particularly around 16th Street, over to 16 Tech, and then to Indiana Avenue and all the rest of it. So as the company gets more engaged in the community and in the neighborhoods, we hope that we can provide some focus in broader development, especially working with the city.
And I want to thank you also, as Director Judas did, you put together a program to increase or to try to incentivize minorities to get involved in the Motor Speedway, and I don't think a lot of people know that. And Mark, that is a daunting task, and I appreciate what you guys are doing to push that. It's something that I think is long overdue, but I appreciate you guys taking the initiative to do it.
Thank you. We care about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I just thank the members of the committee. I believe the program, the original program that we're here to talk about is working. The Speedway is increasing the attendance regularly year to year since the program, and I think it'll continue to pay dividends for the state for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Medicaid state plan amendments. Allison Taylor.
Good morning. Allison Taylor, Interim Medicaid Director for Indiana's Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning. I'm presenting 3 items for you today. The first involves a state plan amendment that our office is pursuing regarding telemedicine. And this is a result of legislation from actually a few years ago. We are just to the point where we are getting our state plan caught up to what is in rule and statute. For the committee, I think the things that you need to know, it's effective 10/1, or it'll be retro when we get CMS approval, which will probably come sometime this fall. There is a slight fiscal impact in the thousands, so really pretty small, and it was not in our April Medicaid forecast, but that's okay. We're ready to move forward with this. And briefly, what we're doing is really modernizing our telemedicine policy in Indiana, so making a few tweaks, getting rid of what you might recall is that hub and spoke model, which had a limitation for reimbursement. You had to be there had to be a 20-mile distance in order to get reimbursement. That was kind of the old world order. That doesn't make sense anymore, so we're flattening that, modernizing, and really just going with reimbursement for telemedicine services. One other thing we're doing is we are clarifying and updating the providers that can participate in telemedicine and Medicaid. Previously, it was a little clunky in that we really referenced just 4 kind of institutions that were able to be reimbursed. So clarifying that there are different provider and provider types that are allowed to participate will just make it a little cleaner for our providers and those that want to get into the telemedicine space. So that is that state of plan amendment.
Any questions? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I look at the fiscal note related to this, and it's my understanding this is more a static determination that you think there'll actually be more telemedicine visits, and so that's why the fiscal note goes up.
Right, so we think utilization might go up a bit, so that's why there's a small
But there,
fiscal.
do we have a dynamic offset that they would not use transportation, an ambulance service or a transportation service to go to a face-to-face visit or even
Right.
an ER visit because they couldn't get in for a
Mhm.
telemedicine visit that day? I mean, is that the offsetting decline?
So I don't have the back and forth that we had with Budget Committee with me, but I do, I think there are certainly trade-offs in moving towards this telemedicine model. And I'm looking straight at Jason, so I'm sure our team has exchanged some thoughts about that. Can I get, do you want to see the fiscal,
I think
the
I want
analysis?
people of the committee to realize that even though I think there's an increase because of utilization, that I think the potential decrease isn't fully
Realized in this
analyzed.
document. Yeah, we tend to focus on what's easiest to quantify, but yeah, I mean, the general move towards telemedicine, I think the underlying concept is, all the savings that are both tangible and also in just personal health, access to care, those aren't as easily quantified, but we have no doubt that this, kind of along with Healthy Indiana Plan and some of the other things we're doing, will just improve outcomes and access, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
All right, the next item on our agenda is a state plan amendment relating to our home health agency cost reporting. This one as well will be a 10/1 of effective date. This one we will be able, just like the other one, to have a retro effective date to 10/1 if CMS approves later in the fall, which we kind of expect. No fiscal impact here. And this change, there's a couple of reasons for it. It is the result of some recent legislation involving home health reimbursement rates, but I think more importantly, that we're in a transitional moment with home health reimbursement. I will say we are working with the Home Health Association on home health reimbursement rates. Historically, they have been reimbursed on a cost report method, and there's a desire, I think on both sides, to take a look and see what the right approach is. So what we are doing is kind of putting our old cost reporting process on the shelf, going into a transitional period where we're going actually to set go to the highest rate we can validate and place home health providers into a fee schedule. And then we are actively engaging with the Home Health Association to develop proposals on, what's next. If it's not a cost report, what is it? What reimbursement mechanism can we use that really makes sense with the way home health is delivered? Home health has obviously been a hot topic in the last few legislative sessions, so we realize that there's some work to do there, and we're going to have some discussions and see what makes sense for consumers and providers in our agency.
Any questions?
Okay.
Senator Taylor.
No, I do have,
I said Senator Taylor.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Taylor.
you're-
That's confusing.
Yeah, see it. This stuff sometimes is shoots over me, but when you talk about reimbursement for home health agencies, I go back to last year when the Federal Department of Labor came out with their ruling on the fact that home health care workers who were not eligible for overtime have now been eligible for overtime, have become eligible. The cost associated with that for our home health care agencies has tremendously increased. And I know in the budget, I believe that our reimbursement rate went up somewhat, some 75 cents.
Right. I think the cuts were restored, and so.
Yes, so the cuts were restored, but wasn't there an increase on top of that, or was that just the cuts being restored?
DSP, I'm not quite sure which. But the good news is, so this transition, I think it is, we're going to take we're having conversations with the association to see what's next. So we are, instead of the status quo, to your point, and having practice in home health law, I'm very, understand what you're saying. And so, I think we're going to see what's next. Like, what is, and that'll be something we take into consideration, because that's a game changer, right? I mean, that's a new factor that wasn't there when we were doing the old cost report method, so.
Okay, so that's something that's gonna be taken into consideration when you talk about this new cost reporting.
Yeah,
associated with
I
home
would
health
assume
care.
so. I'm sure the association will bring it up, that's for sure.
Okay, because I think it's important for us to understand as a state that is not something that we could have controlled, that we had anything to do with, but I can tell you that we're gonna see an exodus of some pretty good home health care agencies if we don't do something about it. And this is, in my opinion, the future is people staying at home with their families and being taken care of. So if we're gonna go down that road, we need to recognize that these costs are increasing for our home health care agencies. And I just wanted I commend you guys for sitting down and talking about this, because it's something that I've been very concerned about for the last year. So
I
thank
hear you.
Allison,
Yep,
for that.
absolutely.
Jason, we didn't really increase the amount of money going on. Actually, we're just honoring the appropriation, right? The appropriation was already there, and you just made sure that the funding was there to accommodate that, or?
I think
It may
Representative
be-
Gooden, there was a 3% rate reduction in law on home health care. That was increased, and I believe $10.5 million was added to the Medicaid appropriation to cover that rate change increase, if I remember correctly.
I think the 10.5 was for direct service providers, which are, and also additionally, the 3% reduction was restored. The 3% reduction initially was done kind of by rule and budgeting, but had been done and had perpetuated itself in 13 and 15 budgeting forecasts and budgeting language.
So it was just rate restoration, basically.
Any other
Well,
questions?
I'm sorry, I want to be clear. The rate was always adjusted every year. There was just a 3% reduction then. So that reduction has been eliminated, but the rate would always be adjusted each year based on experience.
Any other questions?
Okay, got one more for you, and it's the traumatic brain injury waiver. So we're going to jump over to our waiver program. This one is a simple renewal, a 5-year renewal of our traumatic brain injury waiver. We've got less than 200 individuals on the program. There's no change in services or rates. So it is simply a renewal and extension, requiring us to present to you before we go to CMS. So.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Next is the airport development, and Marty Blake.
Good morning. My name is Marty Blake. I'm with the INDOT Office of Aviation. INDOT's state aviation system plan includes 69 airports that serve the air transportation needs of more than 6.5 million Hoosiers. Federal Aviation's Airport Improvement Program fiscal year 2017 grants are still in process until the end of next week. The planned list of projects includes 55 airports in the state of Indiana, which will receive approximately $68.6 million in FAA funds. They are in the process of awarding 90% of the total project cost directly to the municipality sponsoring this project, with a 10% match requirement. INDOT hopes to provide a 5% match, and the municipality or airport will provide a similar 5% match. This will satisfy the FAA's 10% match requirement. Airports are a vital piece of our transportation network, boosting the economic development of each community they serve. INDOT's Office of Aviation is currently working with our industry partners, Connexus Indiana and Aviation Indiana, to update the economic impact of each aviation facility and hopes to have an updated study completed next year. INDOT respectfully requests the $2 million appropriation of the $4 million included in the Build Indiana Fund in the biennium budget for fiscal year 2018 to be released to the Airport Development Fund in an effort to complete these critical airport development projects in the state. Thank you for your support of aviation in the state of Indiana.
Any questions? Thank you. Next, we have the retiree healthcare modifications for the state police, conservation, and excise, and we'll have Deanna Awori.
Good morning. Before we jump into the modifications that State Police and Conservation and Excise have, I just wanted to set the stage on where we are today. In your packets, I think it's the very last page, you should have the summary of our most recent valuation report, which Nyhart is, those are the actuarial firm that works with our office to provide a status of the OPEB benefits. Just very quick overview. In aggregate, the state, the plans are funded at about 29%, but the total unfunded actuarial accrued liability is about $339 million, $300 million of which is with the state police healthcare plan, and $32 million of which is with the conservation and excise plan. So as we talk about the modifications that we're making for 2018, just kind of keep those numbers in mind. I will say that we've not yet received the latest valuation report for 2017, but we do expect to have that next month from Nyhart. But the modifications that will be discussed this morning will not be reflected in the 2017 plan. Primarily, they will be effective in the plan that we receive next October in 2018. So just heads up on that. And just also by way of background, the budget bill, section 52 of this year, provided that any changes to the state police and conservation plans that change eligibility requirements, premiums, benefits, or any other plan modifications need to be reviewed and approved by your office and by budget committee. And so that's why we're here this morning. We are also going to just provide some comments on the impact of the proposed modifications and how that might impact the state's contribution and the overall liability under the plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Pam Douglas and Major Soros to talk about the state police plan. Then I'll provide some comments on what our analysis was on that, and then we'll have Major Porteous talk about the conservation and excise plan, and I'll provide comments on that as well after he's done. Thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, everyone. Appreciate your time and allowing us to be here this morning to give you an update. As mentioned, I'm Charles Sorrells. I'm the Assistant Chief of Staff for the Superintendent. I serve in his HR and administration area. Since the Pew report that was released in 2010, the Indiana State Police has taken a very aggressive posture and steps toward reducing our liability. Beginning with our eligibility requirements, we raised that from 20 years of service to 25 years of service, and we've kept that in place. Last year, we eliminated retiree coverage after age 65 for retirees. Those hired after July 1 of 2016 of last year do not have retiree insurance after reaching age 65. We continue to raise premiums and look at every aspect of our premium structure, benefits, or our deductibles, and our out-of-pocket expenses, and we're raising all of those this year. There will be a premium increase this year. There will be a increase to out-of-pocket limits for both actives and retirees when we talk about this. The one thing that I want to bring to your attention is that what we've done since 2014 when Superintendent Carter took over, he's had a direct initiative on cardiac care because it affects the rest of the body. And now that we have a few years' experience, I can speak on certain terms and not intuitive terms, in that when we initiated what we call our heart initiative, we opened that up to just the active employees. And so we paid for a heart scan for each active employee that volunteered to do that. Literally seen a number of lives actually saved, people going straight to a cath surgery or stents or what not like that. Since then, what I can tell you is that we just received a report from Anthem that we have actually capped, or should said hold the line on our acute cardiac care. Anthem was anticipating that that rate would continue to rise up, and we've actually leveled that off. And so with that, continuing with our partnership with Anthem and things looking forward, we are now wanting to extend that heart initiative, a heart scan, once every 3 years to all of our active employees and our retirees as preventative care. Another prong of that Anthem tells us that one of our challenges is heart disease and diabetes. And so Anthem also brought to us and suggested that we implement a fitness facility reimbursement program. Now, while that may sound like a rich benefit, the employee has to, and the retiree has to show a number of visits per month, and then they have to pay for it up front, so they have skin in the game, and then they can be reimbursed for up to $50 a month for their health care or their health facility costs. Now, what we're seeing there is that we're trying to not only detect poor health, but also maintain it, and then move our dollars down to where we're isolating and identifying things early and then maintaining care through our preventative measures. One of the prerequisites for this program will be is that we have just like Medicare or any other program, there is a annual physical that most plans, if not all, provide before somebody can take advantage of the healthcare facility reimbursement. They will have to show that they went and had their annual physical. So we know that somebody has a baseline of health, and so we're not just throwing that out there. They'll be able to maintain that. So through those things, we're continuing there. The other things that are still ongoing, we have a retiree drug subsidy that brings in about $550,000 a year. Retiree medical benefits account is about $2.4 million a year annually, where we, instead of that money going to the individual for $1,000 for every year served, that goes into a collective pot. We are doing sweeps out of our healthcare fund on an annual basis, and I'm trying to read my note here. We also sweep money out of a long-term disability account that we manage as well, and then we're re-implementing a $20 a week contribution, or $20 per pay contribution from the employees at this time as well. And starting out with a zero balance in 2011, when this all went into effect, we can report to you today that we were somewhere actually north of about $110 million since inception and working toward this funded liability.
Any questions? Representative Gooden.
Thanks for being here, Rachel.
Yes, sir.
Are the state police plan, is it an HSA or is it PPO, or is there a combination?
The PPO.
So it's straight PPO,
Yes,
there's no
sir.
HSA?
Yes, sir.
Under the PPOs, aren't all the preventative health care, isn't all of that covered under that 100% by the insurance?
Yes, sir. The preventatives, yes.
Is there a plan then, if that's the case, is there a plan then to go ahead and include, you do the heart scans, is there a plan to include a colonoscopy or any other type of preventative care? Because ultimately, if you find it in the early stages, it's obviously going to be much cheaper to treat. I think that's probably the whole idea of the preventative 100% being covered. I know that the insurance companies don't necessarily encourage that, but that might be an opportunity for the health initiative is, come up with some kind of acronym or whatever, head, heart, butt, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, if it's 100% preventable, I think overall your total health care costs are going to come down because you're going to catch those at the infant stage. And I think you could probably expand your heart care to other preventative measures in the body, and that would really increase your opportunity, because your experience at the insurance level is going to be much lower, and the fewer visits, the whole case.
Yes, sir. And cancer, as with any group, is a high risk factor. And so we do have a colonoscopy that's available as well, and mammograms as well. So we do have those two things as well as far as preventatives in place already. And we're really trying to, we meet a benchmark. Let me just pause there for a second. We meet a benchmark on our annual physicals, but we want to be above that. Anthem says we meet that benchmark, but we want to increase that substantially.
Can you require those?
Yes, sir. With the fitness facility, that's going to be a prerequisite. Can we force people to the doctor? Not necessarily, no. But if somebody wants to take advantage of a benefit, we can make it a threshold requirement to get that.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Thank you. Just follow up, I guess, Dr. Gooden. Actually, cost effectively, a lot of preventive services are not cost effective because the false positive rates, we end up spending more money to find some of the detection of disease. And so there are two incidences that have been proven consistently over long periods of time, and that's pregnancy care and immunization for childhood. Everything else, because the false positive rate doesn't necessarily mean it's cost effective. You won't necessarily drive down cost. I know.
I know your part there. I negotiate insurance, and there's a reason. I know there's a reason why the Anthem pushes that preventative care, but I get what you're saying as well.
Yeah,
But if you look at
it's
the
a very
lives-
popular notion out there, but if you actually look at the medical literature, it's starting to substantiate that the cost doesn't necessarily go down. Now, if you're that one person,
Right.
it's 100% that cost for you is the difference. My question might be related to this. Is the state police personnel have that many more risk factors for heart disease? And maybe we can do a controlled study from people just at this table of the genetics of a state police and a non-state police person.
I'll participate. I'll participate.
But I mean, what are the risk factors that make state police personnel have this high heart disease rate? Do we have more smokers?
No, I don't know about population-wise smokers. We don't monitor our smokers.
You don't monitor your smokers?
Well,
The number
I-
one factor that can reduce
I
illness and
understand that, sir,
longevity?
but we don't have people sign off saying they smoke or not smoke. I know that we have very few. I know when I go to functions and this and that we don't see people stepping out to smoke on a regular basis. But if I can back up there just for a second to answer your question about the risk factors, when we started the health initiative, we actually partnered with IU Health, and just the nature of our job, we have high levels of stress that come acutely. You know, people in a fight, people chasing somebody down in a car, things like that, and that adrenaline. And this is something that I learned I didn't know. The cardiologist educated us on it, is that adrenaline, if somebody doesn't exercise or do something to move that adrenaline out of the body, that adrenaline is actually like sandpaper on a vessel, and it just erodes away because it's not managed well. Then you have people that they don't have time to eat properly. They're sitting in a car. They're going from one thing to another, and they're just not able to take care of themselves on an 8 to 10 hour basis on a daily basis. So there's a lot of risk factors available there.
I would agree with all those assessments of risk factors. And we also know adrenaline is also cyclic by the daily 24-hour clock. We actually get a surge of adrenaline in the morning that wakes us up, and actually statistically have more heart attacks between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Just a comment, you may want to incentivize non-smoking in your next
Yes, sir.
agreement.
Absolutely.
You know, I would
That's-
say that would be, we were just saying, I had an employee quit smoking because his premiums went down. So it might incentivize you guys to be a little healthier
sir.
if they got a break in their premium, so.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just wanted to be clear that the budget agency does approve of the modifications that State Police has proposed, and wanted to also comment on the various modifications that are outlined in your packet. First of all, I'll say I'm not an actuary, but we did consult quite extensively with Nyhart, who is the actuary for these plans. They did tell us that there were two things that are being proposed that will have an immediate positive impact on the unfunded liability, and that's increasing the out-of-pocket limits for retirees and also the $20 contribution to the 401H plan. Nyhart also recommended that the not providing coverage once individuals reach 65 because they would be eligible in most cases for Medicare is a good thing, and over the long term will provide a favorable status to the plan. As you all discussed, a little earlier, the increasing the premiums and the preventative care measures we think could provide a positive impact, but it really just depends on the claims experience. So to the extent that the gym fitness and the heart scans produces lower claims, healthcare claims, then that would be a positive thing. But to the extent that it doesn't, then obviously those preventative care measures would not be helpful. There were 3 recommendations that we made as we reviewed the plan, and I'll just talk about these really quickly. One is that we would encourage both state police and conservation and excise to explore joining the IAPPP pharmacy contract, which the state is under, which would provide that pharmacy prescriptions would be covered under CVS as opposed to Anthem. We do think we need to continue to work on ways to gain better investment strategies for the money that's in the trust fund. Right now, there's some limited options, but we think statutorily there could be ways to fix that. And then also we would just encourage both entities to continue to look at the right size of funding between what's in their healthcare plan and what's in their OPEB trust plan so that it's more equitable throughout. So, but overall, we did approve of the plans, and I'll turn it over to Major Porteous to discuss his modifications or if there are questions. Yes.
How many people do we currently have on the plan over 65?
Do you all know in your plan? Okay. State Police can get that information to you. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
offhand.
And not to bring up the healthcare debate again, but, you know, you said you're at 100% PPO, but then you're going to start increasing the cost of out-of-pocket. At what point then do the people that's getting the insurance say, okay, it would be cheaper if I was in an HSA because I've already covered the out-of-pocket? Is there an exploration of giving maybe the employees an opportunity to choose between an HSA and a PPO? I mean, I think that's a...
Yeah, that's a fair question. I can defer to
because as you
the
start
plan
increasing the
administrators
out-of-pocket
on
and
that.
their contributions, then really with the PPO, it doesn't necessarily become as admirable because with the HSA, you're actually putting money into a health account that you can use in perpetuity. Or with the PPO, you're just kind of rolling the dice that you may get sick.
Yes,
so
sir.
the insurance company's actually keeping the money.
Yes, sir. And
this
those
is
are
a debate. This is something to discuss at a later time.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to put
And
anybody-
that's what I would offer is that nothing's off the table. We do have retirees in our plan, and HSAs aren't available to retirees. And so we got to look at our holistic pool, just like when we went from the retiree medical benefit, where it was $1,000 a month for or $1,000 a year for every year of service. We took that and put it in our entire pool to take care of everybody. So as we move forward on this, is anything off the table? No. We're going to look at HSAs. We do have the single alternative plan that folks can go into there, but that doesn't help a family and such as that. But our HSA is something we think about, yes. And we'll continue to do that.
All right. Thanks. And I'm
Yes,
not,
sir.
like I said, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot or anything, but thank you for...
Any other questions?
Good morning. I'm Major Michael Porteous with DNR Law Enforcement. I'm the chairman of the Conservation Officer, Excise Police Officer Insurance Committee. And one thing you said there just now about the insurance gets to keep the money in a traditional plan. Because we're self-insured, our insurance fund keeps the money.
Catastrophic, that's how you're self-insured. And that, if you have a liability, then that catastrophic's going to go higher.
We have a specific stop-loss insurance that,
Yeah, catastrophic, that's what, yeah.
Okay.
So that's going to continue to go up if you don't. So
correct.
we can discuss it later.
The changes that we plan to make for our plan, retirees under 65, we're moving them from a 2-tier rate structure, single and family, to a 3-tier rate structure, adding a structure in there for a retiree who has children or a retiree who has a spouse. For the middle tier, we're doing we're multiplying single at 1.9 to arrive at their rate and 2 times the single rate for the family rate. Retirees over 65, they're Medicare eligible, we require our retirees to take Medicare B and Medicare D when they get Medicare A. And so we become secondary for all of their claims. We're taking a phased approach to increasing their claims to get the family rate to twice the single rate. We're going to walk it up at 0.1 every year. This next year it'll be family rate times 1.6. We're going to take that up one step a year and get them up. I think it's in 2020 when we get them walked up to double. All singles, both active and retired, we're increasing their rates, their contribution rate 5% by 5%. New hires beginning January 1st next year will not be eligible for insurance once they our retiree insurance once they become Medicare eligible. We know it's going to take a while before that has a significant impact on the liability, but every year it goes up a little. We have two increases to our benefits. We're on our contact maximums, contact lens maximum, and our vision benefit. We're changing that annual maximum from $105 to $300. And on our prescription deductible, we're adding a $900 family cap. It's currently at $300 per person, the annual deductible for prescriptions. We're going to put a $900 family cap. That has a very small effect, but it helps our largest families. We've got one family I know of where it's a husband, wife, 6 children with single income, the officer's income, and it's that small group of people that we're intended to insulate from potentially a $2,400 deductible every year to cap that one off at $900. We're increasing max out-of-pockets by $250 across the board. I'm sorry, we're increasing deductibles by $250 for single and for family. We're increasing max out-of-pocket limits by $500. We have 2 tiers of the max out-of-pocket. We have $2,250, $4,500 for employees, and $2,550, $5,100 now next year for retirees. We're going to transfer $1 million from our insurance fund to our 115 trust. That's a one-time. We're funded well enough in our insurance fund that we believe we're positive we can sustain that if we do it. We made a commitment to do that one time, and we made a commitment to apply all of our retiree contributions for 2018, move those monthly or quarterly, move all of those contributions from the insurance fund to the 115 trust. That's all of the changes that we're proposing.
On the prescription deductible, you said it's $300 a person, $900 cap per family. What?
I'm
you
sorry.
said on the prescription deductible, you have $300 per person, $900 cap per family, or
Yes,
$900
sir.
per family. What is it currently?
$300 per person.
So right now it's $300 per person, and then there's no cap, is what you're saying?
Cor-
And you're going to put a cap on it.
Well, right, for a family of 4, it's $1,200. For a family of 5, it's
So the only change you're making is you're putting a cap on the family.
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Our typical family is 2.3, our typical family size. So it's only affecting a very small population of our largest families.
No questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the Budget Agency also does approve of the modifications presented by Conservation and Excise. The recommendations that we had were pretty much the same, so, thank you.
Mr. Dudich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few comments to the committee and those in the public. First, I want to thank members of the state police, conservation officers, and excise officers for their work with the budget agency on this. The law did change. It required us to be more engaged than we were before. This was our first year really diving into these numbers, especially since the plans are separate from the state plan for state employees. And so There's probably a few bumps in the road, and we'll clean that up as we go through this process, but I want to thank Deanna Owari and Greg Strack from our office for the work that they did. I think there's a couple of things that we need to take away from this. Number one, the dollars in the other post-employment benefits trust fund that's held by the treasurer does not have a maximum investment opportunity. The law was changed in the last session to allow for the treasurer to invest a little more aggressively in those funds, but not to the point where they mirror those of other retirement funds. And so I think the budget agency will try to work with state police, the Conservation Excise, Treasurer's Office, and General Assembly to see if there's additional investment options to provide a greater return on investment. The reason that's a good thing is because it reduces the unfunded liability over a period of time. Deanna mentioned the IAPPP, which is the state's prescription drug program, which most of our public universities participate in, including Ball State, several school corporations in the state of Indiana. There's an opportunity for review by state police and conservation excise to look at what the benefits would be by going into that program with the state of Indiana and the IAPPP. We think that will generate savings and also result in reducing the amount of unfunded liability. And the other thing is looking at plan design. We've obviously, Representative Gooden mentioned high deductible plans associated with health savings accounts. Obviously, those have a different slant to them in terms of providing health insurance. And that is one thing we want to explore both with Conservation Excise State Police and their health insurance carrier Anthem to see if there's opportunities for different plan designs as well as how to manage retirees in a different manner in terms of having them on the same plan and the claims experience being combined with active employees. So appreciate patience on this. Again, this is our first crack at the process and the health insurance for retirees. We do understand the unfunded liability issue is a major impact, but also we need to make sure that we're taking the right steps to start shoring that up. And that will take several years to do, but appreciate the patience on getting there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else? Are there any motions to remove items from the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Ball State for their hospitality and also the ARC and Courtyard Marriott for providing a good experience for us. And thanks Senator Kinley for all his years and for mentoring me for the last 9 years. And miss him today. Wish he was here for his last meeting, but did a lot for us. And I really appreciate all the work he has done for us. And Representative Brown, thank you. You mentored me a little bit as well over the years. So is there any committee discussion? So the next meeting will be October 19th and 20th, and we will have a location here soon. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead. Yeah, USC Notre Dame weekend. You gotta be careful. With that, we'll adjourn.